A long time ago, in a small town, there lived an old toy maker named Geppetto. He sold wooden toys that he made to get by. The only thing the old toy maker regretted in his life was not having a child. One day, when he was walking in the woods, he found just the right log for his new toy.
Just the log I was looking for. I will make a beautiful puppet with it.
Geppetto took the log on his back and carried it to his workshop. He put the log on his table and started to carve. But suddenly something unexpected happened and he heard a voice coming from the log. Ah! Geppetto was stunned at first, but then thought that he was mistaken. Geppetto kept on carving, but then he heard the same voice again. Ah!
I must be getting really old. I am hearing voices.
Geppetto kept on working. First the head of the puppet came out, then finally his arms and legs followed. Geppetto finally finished the puppet, sat him on a chair and started to tidy up. At that moment, he heard another voice. Hello! Geppetto looked around stunned, but he could not see anybody else than the wooden puppet. So he kept on with his work. After a short while, the puppet jumped down from the chair and started dancing in the room. Seeing this, Geppetto really struggled not to faint.
Oh my God! This puppet is alive!
Of course it wasn't a real kid, but it sure laughed, talked, and played like one. Geppetto held the puppet in his arms.
From now on, your name shall be Pinocchio, my child.
Geppetto and Pinocchio started to have happy times together. It was time for Pinocchio to go to school. But Geppetto did not have the money to buy Pinocchio his school stationery. Therefore, he sold his coat and gave the money to Pinocchio. Pinocchio took the money and got on his way to school with joy. Watching all the shops, people and the marketplaces on the way, suddenly he saw a commotion ahead. To find out what was going on, he went amongst the crowd. Because he was so short, he barely walked past everyone to get to the front. What he saw was a big, colourful tent. It was a circus tent. The clown in front of the tent was calling out customers. Pinocchio was curious to see what was inside, but the clown stopped him from entering.
You can't go inside unless you pay.
Pinocchio thought for a while and remembered the money Geppetto gave him for school.
I have money.
He took the money out of his pocket and gave it to the clown. Inside the tent was extreme fun. He saw puppets playing on the stage in the middle of the tent.
Hey, they're also made out of wood.
Jumping on the stage, Pinocchio started to dance amongst the puppets. But the spectators of the show were angry with him.
Get off the stage!
The owner of the circus above the stage, holding the strings of the puppets, got very happy to see a live puppet.
A puppet without strings would make me a lot of money. Ha 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 ha!
He thought. And as soon as the show was over, he caught Pinocchio and put him in a cage. Pinocchio was very upset that he did not listen to Geppetto and went directly to school, so he started to cry. Seeing how regretful Pinocchio was, a fairy appeared right next to him. "You should have done what your father told you to do, but I see that you are aware of your mistake now. That is why I will save you, but don't you ever do the same mistake again." Pinocchio was very happy. He wiped his tears away.
But I have no money. How am I going to go to school now?
The fairy cast a spell and money appeared in Pinocchio's hand. "Do not waste this money. Go straight to school." The fairy took Pinocchio out of the circus. Singing with joy, Pinocchio was on his way to school once again.
La 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 la.
Seeing Pinocchio joyfully singing, the shifty fox and his friends, the cat, cut Pinocchio's way. And they made a plan to take away Pinocchio's money.
Where are you going so joyfully anyway?
I'm going to buy some stationery and go to school.
This money won't be enough for stationery. If you do as we say, you'll have much more money.
What do you want me to do?
You'll give us that money and we'll plant it in the magic field. And you too can have a money tree. You can go and pick the money up whenever you need.
The naive Pinocchio believed everything Fox had said and gave away his money. Taking away the money, the fox and the cat quickly got away. Being left alone, the fairy appeared next to Pinocchio again. "Why aren't you still at school? Did you get the stationery with the money I gave you?" Actually, the fairy knew that he gave his money to the fox. She warned Pinocchio. "Don't you lie to me, or I will punish you." Pinocchio did not listen to the fairy and lied anyway.
I bought the stationery but left them at school.
As soon as Pinocchio finished his sentence, his nose started to grow. "Are you telling the truth?" As he told more lies, Pinocchio's nose kept on growing and growing. At the end, he couldn't even move his head.
But how? What is going on?
Finally, he realized his mistake and told the fairy all about what had happened. Seeing that Pinocchio had taken the right path, the fairy brought his nose back to normal. "I am forgiving you because you told the truth." With another spell, she gave back the money the fox had taken. And she once more warned him not to waste any more of his money. Holding the money in his hand, singing along, Pinocchio started to walk again. But this time round, he was facing another type of danger. The circus owner that had captured him was standing right there before his eyes. Because he had gotten away, the circus owner was very cross with Pinocchio. He wanted to punish him. He caught Pinocchio and threw him in the sea. When Pinocchio fell over into the sea, he did not sink. He stayed afloat on the water because he was made of wood. Pinocchio really liked this feeling and started to swim by moving his arms and legs. And it all happened while he was swimming to the shore.
Hey, what's going on? Where am I?
Pinocchio suddenly found himself in a dark place. He looked around but could not see a way out. Actually, Pinocchio was swallowed by a giant fish, and now he was sitting right in the middle of his stomach. Meanwhile, Geppetto was worried about Pinocchio, and he went out to search for him.
Pinocchio! Pinocchio!
Finally, he had reached the shore where Pinocchio was thrown in the sea. He asked the fishermen whether they had seen his son or not. One of the fishermen remembered the boy Geppetto was asking for, and he told him that he fell down in the sea. Geppetto asked the fisherman for help. Knowing how good a person Geppetto was, the fisherman could not refuse to help. And so he gave him a small boat to save Pinocchio. Geppetto jumped on the boat and sailed to the sea. After a while, suddenly a big storm had begun. The small boat could not handle the big waves anymore and collapsed. And Geppetto found himself in the middle of the sea. Geppetto was old and also did not know how to swim, so he started to sink deep into the water. Right at that moment, the giant fish which had swallowed Pinocchio also swallowed Geppetto. Geppetto slid down the fish's throat straight into his stomach, and he heard the crying voice of a child. He, of course, recognized this voice right away.
Pinocchio, my son, I finally found you. I was so worried.
Hearing his father's voice, Pinocchio hugged Geppetto in tears.
I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you, Daddy. Forgive me. I will always do what you say.
Seeing that this time Pinocchio was really sorry, the fairy decided to rescue them. She took Geppetto and Pinocchio out of the fish's belly and flew them onto the shore. Pinocchio became a very clever boy after that day and always listened to his father. Went to school every day, and after school he ran home to help his father in his workshop. The fairy saw what a nice boy Pinocchio became and decided to give him a prize. One night, when Pinocchio was sleeping, she came next to his bed and cast a spell on him. In the morning, Pinocchio woke up to get ready for school, as always. Just as he was getting out of bed, he realized that something was different. First, he looked at his hands, and then to his body. He was shocked. He was not made of wood anymore. He was a normal boy, right in the flesh. He jumped with joy from his bed and ran next to his father.
Daddy! Daddy! Look at me!
Seeing Pinocchio as a real boy made Geppetto very happy.
Finally, I have a real son.
Father and son, they hugged each other with tears of joy. Pinocchio never lied again, and his nose always stayed where it was. Once there lived a family not too far out from where we all lived. The Darling family. The Darling family had 3 children. Their names were Jan, Michael and Wendy. Wendy would always tell her mum how Peter Pan would always play the flute in her room. Her mother would always tell her that she was imagining things, but couldn't help but notice the leaves in the room, which always confused her a bit. Wendy would always say that the leaves fall off Peter Pan. One night, when their parents went out for the night, the kids were left home all alone, and when they got sleepy, they all went to sleep. Peter Pan silently entered their room and started looking for the leaves he had left behind. At that moment, Wendy woke up. Peter Pan, I was waiting for you. Nobody would believe that you're real. Wendy gave back the leaves she had been hiding for Peter. She really liked Peter, and so they sewed his leaves back on his clothing.
Wendy, would you like me to tell you an amazing adventure story?
I don't want to hear about an adventure. I want to live one, Peter Pan. Right at that moment, Peter's small fairy friend, Tinker Bell, entered through the window. Well, of course. I knew you'd be here. Are you getting ready for a new adventure without me?
You know it's not possible for me to do anything without you.
Wendy woke her siblings up. Her siblings looked at Peter Pan and Tinker Bell with great confusion.
Well, are you ready to fly?
Tinkerbell scattered her fairy dust and off they went floating into thin air, and all together they left the house. The kids headed towards Neverland at once. After a long journey, they arrived at Neverland, and there they were. The mermaids, wild animals, Indians, pirates, and the lost boys were there too. Amongst them all was the most dangerous of them, called Captain Hook. Captain Hook was Peter Pan's enemy. The reason for this was because when they were fighting, Peter cut his arm and a huge crocodile ate it. Along with his arm, he also swallowed his watch, and because of this, the crocodile would always make a tick-tock noise. And so Captain Hook would always know if the crocodile was near from the noise. When looking around with his binoculars on the deck, Captain Hook spotted Peter Pan and kids looking at him from the top of a hill. He immediately ordered the men to fire the cannons. It was very hard for Peter Pan and the kids to get away from the cannons.
Tinkerbell, you take the kids to a safe place. I will deal with Hook.
Tinkerbell was very jealous of Wendy, so she wanted to keep her away from Peter Pan. With some made-up excuse, she left Wendy back on the hill and brought Jan and Michael to a safe place down at the beach.
The lost boys who lived on the island saw Wendy from afar, and thinking that she was an enemy, they wounded her. At the same time, Peter Pan was fighting with Captain Hook, but seeing the crocodile that got his arm suddenly reappearing, Hook ran away in fear.
Ah! Whilst Peter Pan was coming back, he saw Wendy lying on the rocks wounded, and he was very upset.
And the lost boys were very sorry when they realized that the girl that they had wounded was Peter Pan's friend.
I have left the kids in your care.
Tinkerbell was so sorry. She also realized that what she did was wrong. I am so sorry, Peter. This will never happen again, I promise. Lost boys made a beautiful home for Wendy and her brothers. At night, they all would sleep in the house underneath the trees, listening to Wendy's stories. And Peter Pan would keep guard in front of the house. One day, when they were resting on the rocks, they spotted the pirates approaching. The pirates took the Indian chief's daughter hostage. Peter Pan and the boys went after to save the chief's daughter. And there was a big battle between them and the pirates. In the end, they saved his daughter and brought her to the chief. After that day, the Indians, Peter Pan, and the lost boys became very close friends. In fact, the chief ordered 2 of his best men in Peter Pan's command to guard the boys. Of course, Captain Hook was furious about this.
One day I will beat you, Peter Pan, and you will not be able to get away.
One night, when Wendy started to tell the story of her family, Peter realized how much she and her brothers missed their home. So he told them that they could go back if they wanted to, but that he wanted to stay. When they all were packing up for their long journey, they were attacked by the pirates. The pirates caught the boys after they set up a trap to the Indians and captured them. Peter Pan was sleeping at home, not knowing all that happened to the boys. Captain Hook saw him sleeping, but he could not open the door to Peter Pan's treehouse. deal, he poured the poison in the bottle he was carrying under the door, causing Peter Pan to sleep for hours. Peter Pan slept one whole day, and when he woke up, Tinkerbell entered. After she told him all that had happened, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell went out to rescue the boys. When they arrived to the Happy Rock, the pirates' headquarters, they saw that there was no pirate on guard. And when they went over to the other side of the rock, they were shocked from what they saw. Wendy, Jan, and Michael and the lost boys were all tied up to the poles, and Captain Hook was holding a torch in flames.
Say your last words.
As their eldest, Wendy began to talk. Dear friends, my last words to you will be the words your real mothers would have told you. If they were here, they would have told you not to be afraid and be courageous to face your death. Don't be afraid. Kindness always wins. Always. Captain Hook got very angry with Wendy's words, so he brought her to the boat and tied her to the big pole. At this moment, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell reached out to save the boys. At the same time, the Indians and their chief came to help. This made Peter Pan so happy, because with their help, they rescued the boys. It was now time to get Wendy. Peter Pan and the lost boys got on Captain Hook's ship, where only a few pirates remained. And when they realized that they would be beaten, they jumped off the ship.
There's nowhere to hide, Hook. Surrender!
Peter Pan and the lost boys started to charge towards Captain Hook, pushing him to walk backwards, and suddenly he heard the noise, the one noise that he was most afraid of. When Captain Hook looked back in fear, he saw the croc waiting for him to fall down into the water.
Help!
In a flash, he ran to the other side of the boat, jumped and started to swim as fast as he could. Peter Pan and the lost boys began to laugh. From that moment on, Hook's ship belonged to the lost boys and their captain was Peter Pan.
The crew is ready for your orders, Captain Peter.
Sail away!
The boys untied the ropes and the sails blew up with all their might.
Tinkerbell, fly us away to the home of the Darling family.
The kids were very happy to hear this. Wendy, Jan and Michael were going to reunite with their parents they had dearly missed. When Tinkerbell sprinkled the fairy dust, suddenly the ship was airborne and started to fly in the sky. Wendy was restless to get home and tell her parents all about Peter Pan, Tinkerbell, and the Neverland. From that day on, Neverland was going to be their second home and Peter Pan their best friend.